probably Muskowski at some point.
Yeah,
You know.
well, yeah, because
Municipal is also Cree, it means red, blood red. So when I was working on First Nations, I bought regularly.
Well, I'd like to welcome you all here. Maybe we'll get started. This is the Municipal Water System Information Meeting for the Eagle Cliff neighborhood. My name is Rod Hayre. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at the municipality, and I know we did a few introductions, but maybe I'll just quickly go over what we're going to talk about, and then do quick introductions around the table one more time, and then get right into the meeting. So in today's meeting, what we're going to do is actually do tag team presentation to you guys in the information session. We're going to talk about the system itself, some quick facts about the Eagle Cliff system, the rate structure, and consumption behavior. We've got a graph just showing consumption for the past year, and then we've got some financial reports we're going to go over, last year's financial results, 5-year financial plan that was approved, and basically some infrastructure and reserve balance information that we're going to review with you. And then Glen is going to get into the water quality, basically the operations report is the water quality report that we send to Vancouver Coastal Health. And that'll, well, I mean, just you can ask questions during the presentation, and then we'll, after the information session is over, we'll convene right into the local area, the LAC meeting, which is an open meeting, and members of the public are welcome to stay for that as well. So before we get started, maybe we'll just do a roundtable introduction. My name is Rod Hayre, Chief Financial Officer for the organization. I started here about 1.5 years ago. And
I'm Annette. I'm the Utilities Coordinator. I send out the bills. I'm your first contact with water issues and questions.
I'm Councillor Alison Morse, the Council Liaison to the Committee.
Len Dursky, current chair, been involved with the system with David since the, 90s when we moved here.
Tim Municipal, new member for ECLAC. Glen Cormier, also a new member for the committee. David Ridge, been here forever.
Glen Shkuran, Director of Engineering for the municipality.
Stephanie Short, Committee Clerk.
thank you. So without further ado, maybe Annette's going to talk about the rate structure and number of connections there.
Eagle Cliff has about 108 connections currently, and the water source is the open reservoir of about 2 million gallons when it's near full. There are 2 wells that support the system, and the meters are read. At the moment, they are read February 15th, June 1st, August 15th, and October 1st. The annual water charge is based on an average daily consumption, which is measured between June and September 30th. And it's tiered according to between 50 gallons to 225 gallons is between $430 and $580. Each additional gallon over 225 gallons is charged at $1.50. The system is built annually in October, and letters are sent out after each meter reading if the operators assume a leak or if they detect a leak at a private property, or if the consumption is higher than 240 gallons per day. That also would trigger that people are contacted by letter. We are currently encouraging all homeowners that they give us their contact information, email addresses, and or phone numbers, so we can immediately contact them in case we suspect a leak. And we don't have to do it by letter only. There is a contact form on the municipal website for that.
So just
Yeah.
going back a couple pages in the document sent out on page 3 of 45, under Eagle Cliff neighborhood,
and it describes the water system, and it does so a number of times in the document. It refers to a ground well, and there's two.
I noticed it as well.
As you,
I was gonna bring it up.
Just for
yeah.
corrective purposes and accuracy of
Yeah,
documentation.
the other document, it shows single well.
Yeah.
We'll get that corrected.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the
So the 108 connections are connected. Are there any vacant lots?
I think about 124 parcels have the ability to connect in
Okay.
Eagle Cliff.
That sounds right, was it? Sorry,
I think we had originally
one,
potential 140.
that was the original letter of patent, I think, but that,
Yeah. And so there's some bigger lots that could, something like,
boy, you'd have to,
but it would be a cliffhanger.
you'd have to put in a gondola.
Sorry, that's a maximum allowed, or
Yeah.
that's how many
That's
possible connections we are?
140 connections. We have 3 places that have double connections because they either put in auxiliary buildings or suites. And when we were running it before the municipality, we decided that an auxiliary building was another house. So that was 2 more. And of course, there's always the potential for auxiliary buildings. In fact, there are only 3 in Eagle Cliff that have them. So potentially, if we put 140 lots and auxiliary building for everybody, we'd have 280. But a lot of places like mine are cliffs like this, and they're minimum 1 acre, and I could put in another 6 houses and another 6 auxiliary buildings. But
You'd have to rezone it.
no, it's
No.
already zoned for 1 acre
Yeah.
lots.
Oh, okay, I thought you
And
said
it's
you had a
all-
1 acre lot.
It's all zoned for 1 acre minimum, but there's potential there for many of the lots to eventually build more houses, up to 140 without accessory buildings. But unlikely.
So before we go on, I see you got the chart above you there now. The numbers across the bottom of the chart, I'm assuming that's number of households?
Yeah, this is,
Yeah.
I was just gonna get to that graph right here.
Okay.
So we've got a graph here that just, it's in the package as well, that displays annual consumption for 2018. So the houses are plotted across the bottom of the graph, and we've charted it in basically increasing order of consumption as well, so that we're not kind of going all over the place. So you can see the blue line represents the actual annual consumption, and the 39,700 gallons of consumption, or the 56,000 gallons of consumption, are just to give you context in terms of, so if you were to draw a line up from about the 100th household there, they consume 56, or almost 57,000 imperial gallons in the year. The arithmetic average consumption is about 27,500 imperial gallons a year, which translates into a daily consumption of 75 imperial gallons a day. Annette had pointed out to me, again, just to give you guys some context, is that household that consumed 56,920 gallons paid $430 for their annual water consumption, because you are billing based on the average consumed in the summer months and not on, not the consumption outside of that area.
Say that again.
Yeah, please.
This particular, if I may help,
Okay, you go ahead, Annette.
this particular number, this particular household, still pays the lowest rate because they did not consume more than the 100 gallons per month during the summer months, but they had a very high consumption in, say, May or April, which does not affect the utility bill.
Okay.
That's something.
How can people have
Yeah,
high
so
consumption?
That'll be a recommendation as we go into the
I
second
don't know
half.
what they use. It could have been a leak during the
Could
winter
have been a leak,
months,
could have been.
or I don't know for what else.
So on that front, I've got a couple questions.
Mhm.
So skipping the 56,000 and
Yeah.
going directly to the 110,000,
Yeah.
Is that one household?
Yes,
Is that a repeat household?
No.
It's a single event?
it's a single event in the year 2018.
Is it a leak?
Presumably, the person was contacted and it was pointed out that the consumption was very high in a particular month, and I have not heard back. It was not a spinning meter, which indicates most likely it was not a leak, but consumption.
Or a hose running slowly.
Or a hose running that was then switched off, or,
But that house wasn't the highest house the year before.
no,
Yeah, so it's not.
Do we, just again curious, do we have a pattern of particular households being the high user, or it's just completely random?
it's random.
Was last year's consumption, did it have the same spike? Was there, or was it,
I think
it was
it's,
a blip?
I don't have the chart in front of me.
Just let me-
Just a minute.
Just for
I
sure.
got my agenda package from last year.
Oh, you have to. And it wasn't plotted
It
this
wasn't
way
plotted
last
this
year,
way.
actually, we had basically plotted them in the order that they
No such
usually
thing
showed
as
up,
a
they're all over the
No,
place.
they're not open right now.
Yeah, I
But
don't
you
think.
still see a high consumer in the same.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
one individual, or I'm assuming that's one, has that unusual consumption, are they billed for more?
Yeah.
They're billed
Yes,
for.
so for example, this household here that consumed it was 111,000 gallons, their bill came to about $1,000.
Oh.
Yeah.
Based on the math, I assumed it would be closer to 700. How did you come to 1,000?
I would have to do the calculation here, it's
I did
according
that.
to this,
It's 307 gallons per day,
yeah,
which would have been 225 gallons, would be 580. And then roughly 80 gallons at $1.50 a gallon was another $120. Tallied that would be 700, based on the charts, because that's what I wrote down when
Yeah,
I was
but
looking earlier.
the billing is done on the basis of consumption during the 4 months that the meters are read,
so,
right?
yeah.
So
Not for
there-
the, and this is for the whole
Whole
year.
year.
So you're saying that then during the 4 months the meter was read, they were
A little-
using a higher per day rate than even that indicates?
No, this is the annual, that's the annual rate here for that particular residence. But the billing is done based on the average per day per month
Okay,
between June and September.
so they use the bulk of that during the summer months
Maybe,
then?
yeah,
Okay.
seems to me.
Because we have something with an average, I did some research this afternoon and found some relatively recent documents published by the British Columbia government. And they had all kinds of averages. And it turns out that the average person in BC is around 120, or household, sorry, is 125.
Gallons.
Yeah, that's pretty much, and it's pretty much universal across Canada. I just want, just in perspective, where ours is at 75, which means
Yeah,
that could be due, of course, to
part-timers.
summer people, part-time, and et cetera, but.
Well, no, because we're saying that.
No, but this
the billing
graph
period-
is 365 days.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just as a note, then, as a comment for next year, I think we need to bring the chart and the billing periods into
You
line,
should show
Yeah.
both, maybe
so that,
Yeah.
because that's,
That's,
some of
I'm making conclusions that
Yeah.
are not necessarily connected, sorry.
Maybe on this graph, you could draw a line at 60,000 gallons, which would be our basic billing consumption, or what we designed our system for.
yeah,
And you've marked down there 56,920. That should be what we anticipated our maximum use would be.
yeah. That's what's on 250, wasn't it?
Yeah, based on 150 gallons a day.
That's, yeah.
And so we're basically consuming, on the average, half of that. I mean, if we're consuming on the average, taking your green line there, 27,510, and we designed our system, should be able to work finally perfectly even at double that.
And if those people were living here all
Yeah.
year, then you would probably have a higher average
Yes.
consumption because you'd have
Yeah,
all the taps running
because we
365 days.
used to do a June 1st, we did a May 1st reading
Yeah.
at times, and
Yeah.
that brought the add up to about 100. Just,
How does our average daily consumption compare to the rest of the island? Slow.
yeah, because it's always been, you know,
Yeah,
the,
people are very careful, and we don't have very many lawns.
yeah,
You don't know point in
You
watering
can't grow
rocks.
Don't they grow? And that
They
moss-
seem to.
yeah. Well, the moss comes back as soon as it gets one rainfall.
okay,
Moving on.
Okay, so yeah, moving on.
let's spend some money here.
The financial results here, the first of several slides is the 2018 operating results. And so the first column is the 2018 budget. And in the 2018 budget, I'll go over the numbers in the first column first for the budget itself. Anticipated operating expenditures were 73,000. That's the sum of basically the 33,000 right down to the transfer to reserves. So if you would take all your numbers, you total 73,000 for your anticipated operating costs. Your contribution and the budgeted one, oh, sorry.
Where are you getting that number
Yeah.
from?
Oh, it doesn't show on there. All I'm saying is basically if you went from 33,554 in the first column in the expenditures,
Okay,
down to the professional development and training,
okay,
the sum of your operating expenditures would be about $73,000 a year.
okay.
Okay, for the budget.
It's the 81 less the 77 for reserves.
Okay. So, and it's kind of building to what I was going to get to. So the budgeted contribution to reserves was about $8,000. I mean, to be exact, $77.93. That was fun. Oh, actually, before I kind of get into the first column, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. What I should have pointed out that for all operating utilities and local area services, all of the expenditures are funded through user fees that are collected from users of the system. So moving back ahead to the 2018 budget here, I was basically I highlighted that the expenditures, operating expenditures, the budgeted operating expenditures were $73,000 with an anticipated contribution to reserves of $8,000, and they were funded through $46,000 of water utility fees that were collected, and through parcel taxes of $32,000, which basically are collected at the rate of $240 per connected parcel, and we collect a minor amount of parcel fees for the float fund, about $3,000 a year. What the first column is showing right now, there's a budgeting inequity that I've inherited. Your $32,000 that we collect in parcel taxes is meant to go to as a reserve contribution for renewal and replacement of your infrastructure. And so really, in order for us to be able to be making a $32,000 contribution to the reserves, your water utility fees need to be about $27,000 higher, or your expenditures need to be, lower, so that we can get that number back into balance. So as I'm working through the budget process, I'll be looking at creating that equity for the 2020 budget numbers. So basically, that I'll be looking at a way of making sure that the parcel tax that is collected goes to reserves. That being said, we did make, if you take a look in the 2018 actual column, we did make a $32,000 contribution to the reserve. And the reason we were able to make that contribution was because our expenditures were lower than budgeted. Our actual expenditures were about $16,000 favorable to budget, and our revenues were also favorable to budget. In our water utility fees, we actually had a favorable budget due, I think there were a couple of connection fees which totaled $3,000, and another $3,000 was due to collecting more revenue, probably due to people consuming more water. So we had a favorable to budget revenue there. So combining the favorable 6,000 revenue budget and the favorable expenses number, we were able to contribute the 32,000 to reserves in 2018.
Would normally then one of the simple ways to it would be just increase your tolls? Like our, just going, like whatever we're paying that averages?
Yeah,
Is that the usual? Because like right now, where the annual fee is $430 or $440, so you would make that $550 or whatever.
typically that's what most municipalities
Oh, okay.
would do, because there isn't an opportunity, unless there's an opportunity to reduce expenses, but I don't see an opportunity to reduce expenditures and continue providing the services that are provided. So definitely a review of the fees is in order, in
And
order
there-
to ensure that contribution continues being made in future.
And Eagle Cliffs is low anyway, right? Based on the rest of the island.
They appear to be low to me in
Lower.
comparison to, yeah.
Okay, I mean,
I went back into last year's meeting minutes and reports and whatnot, and I thought there was an action item then, because I think you identified this
Yeah.
as an issue last year, and that we were using, in essence, capital monies to run O&M, and it was raised then that you were going to examine and come up with a new number. We're putting that out another year yet?
We'll be looking at it this year, yeah. It was essentially when we were working on the budget process, expenditures didn't go up, and I had lost sight of the fact that the contribution to reserves at that time was not equal to what we were collecting in parcel.
So just
Parcel
so
taxes.
that I understand, when you said we're looking at this for budget year 2020, are we looking at this so that starting January coming up, the new rates will be in effect? Or are we going to be discussing this at next year's meeting, saying, okay, we've studied it and this is what it looks like, and it won't be implemented now until 2021?
I would like to make a recommendation to council for them to be in effect for January 1st, 2020, so that we can rectify the budget situation that we have here.
So do we have, maybe this is part of the next meeting, or maybe this is still yet to come in?
And that's something I need to, again, something I need to determine. It came up at last night's meeting as well. According to the way, the governance structure, I need to come back to this committee for them to make a recommendation to council.
So do you
There
have
are
any-
7 committees like this, and time is limited, and resources are limited at the municipality. So I've got to figure out a way of being able to do that, because I cannot conduct
no.
7 different meetings within the budget process with 7 different water districts to get recommendations for council for the budget to go forward. Last year, what I had proposed and what I would have liked to have done was, as part of the I would like to build it into the budget numbers as we work through the budget, and we have a public consultation, and I would prefer that people from the LACs and from the communities come to the budget presentation, which is a public consultation process, and provide their comments there. I mean, that would be out of line with the current governance structure, which requests that we come back to the LAC for recommendation.
And that's
So
even
in
more
light
difficult
of
because we
not
only
being
meet
able
once
to
a year.
do that, I would still like to make the recommendation to council if I'm not able to have those meetings. Basically hear from the public at the public consultation in terms of what their response is to that proposal to council.
Just a quick question, the parcel tax, that's
Yeah.
specific to Eagle Cliff.
No. Oh, yeah.
But this one is, yes.
That one, do other
Yeah.
areas have the same?
Hood Point has a parcel tax, which is similar. I believe those are the only 2 that have a parcel tax. I don't think there's one in the other
So the other districts are funded specifically from their fees.
from their fees, and they have different rate structures. I mean, for example, Coke Bay has a flat fee, and then they have a variable rate. They don't, I find this rate structure kind of complex, and I'm not sure, I mean, maybe it takes into consideration that there are seasonal people there. I don't know the background on how it was established, but to have I was just talking with Annette earlier as an example, to have a rate structure such as this, for example, if you have a huge swimming pool, you fill it up on April the 1st, you cycle it through the summer, and then you empty it out in September and refill it again, or something. I'm just as an example, to avoid having to pay more for water. So I haven't seen a rate structure that resembles this anywhere else. So I'm not sure what the objectives were when this rate structure was established. I haven't done that research either.
Basically, we have so much water in the winter,
Doesn't matter.
we can give it away,
Yeah.
and we do.
It's,
And we don't really care how much people use in the winter. The amount of chlorine is inconsequential. What we are always concerned about is what they use in the summer. And that's why this system was set up the way it was. Because if people do have hot tubs or swimming pools, we'd rather they did them in the winter. And if we have a structure that's based on the yearly consumption, it's relatively meaningless as far as we're concerned. It's the summer consumption that's our concern. And so that's why in the past, we billed our people from June to September, and we didn't take readings in February or January because it didn't make a damn bit of difference.
Oh, okay.
It does when you go into the summer with a 75% reservoir.
But it
Well,
wasn't
yeah, but-
75% at the
But
beginning of the summer.
if
so-
we have our readings in April, you find out if there's any leaks during the winter, and you have a month or so to fix them before the
onslaught.
onslaught of uses starts.
Yeah, so but like I said, I think this will fit better into the second meeting
Yeah, right.
because the monitoring of the reservoir is one of the recommendations. That needs to be done, and there's many, I've researched it, and there's many ways to do it. Anyways, that's my opinion.
Do you have any more questions on the 2018 operating results slide before I move into the capital area?
So it's safe to say the reason we were able to bank some extra money is because of overuse.
Overuse, and we didn't have any capital expenditures.
Capital is going to be in the next slide here. So essentially our 2018 budget, we had a provision of $24,000 in the budget, and in case we had to replace pumps and whatnot. If we don't have to replace anything, we don't, then we return the funding back to source. But we didn't have, what we had was in fact a vehicle which was acquired for exclusive use in the water utilities, and the cost of that vehicle was prorated to each water LAC based on the number of connections relative to the total connections. In terms of this is a 5-year financial plan that was approved by council back in March of last year, and what was done was essentially in the outer years we had used assumptions for inflation for the various types of expenditures, and used essentially adjusted the user fees accordingly. They were adjusted by 1.5%. So we'll be doing a lot more rigor in preparing the 5-year financial plan for 2020 to 2024. And that would be especially looking at what the required or recommended contribution to reserves should be in order to have adequate capital reserves to take care of the infrastructure in Eagle Cliff. In terms of the capital financial plan, there was a provision of $95,000 in 2019 for, I can't remember what that was for reservoir. Increase to the reservoir, but I don't think any action has been taken on that. item this year, so those funds will be returned.
Except this is moving forward, isn't it? This is not what has happened, except we're in the
This
third
is,
quarter
this
of
is the
2019.
plan, yeah, so there was a plan to spend $95,000
In 2019.
in 2019.
Well, yes and no.
But it
When I-
didn't.
When I look at last year's forecast plan, I would have expected to see similar numbers page for page, but they weren't. Let me pull it up. I think last year's capital plan was showing an anticipated or forecast 24,000 per year
Yeah.
out.
For every year.
And I don't see how we went from 24 to 95 for this year. Whether it was expended or not is another story. And all of a sudden, 2020 on is zeros?
It should not be zero. I mean, I actually relied on the previous director of engineering for his capital plan numbers for outgoing years. So I essentially, I mean, there should be a provision in all of those years, so we'll be paying close attention with our infrastructure, with our asset management exercise this year and preparing the 5-year financial plan so that we've got a realistic idea of what will be going into those 5 years. So we do this.
This is last year's
That's
5-year
correct.
capital plan,
Yeah,
and it's showing that 2019, this first year on this plan, would have been 25,000.
that's
That's
correct.
right.
So that was an outer year, that is the 2018 5-year financial plan.
Correct.
So we we put a lot of attention when we're doing that plan into 2019. And then 2020 to 20, so 2000 and, sorry, yeah, when we did that in 2000 and,
You would have done it.
sorry, this is the previous
2017.
one, that's why I'm a year out of sync. So that would have been done in 2017, I believe. So you have 2018 number on that plan that you're looking at? That's the first year, right?
No,
So
2017.
2017 is the first year.
It's the first year. So-
2018 is,
Yeah.
is the second year, 2019, et cetera.
So we go through this exercise every year, and essentially we start off fresh.
But this is what was handed out last year at this
Yes.
event. So I would have expected to see some continuity or an explanation as to how we jumped from 30,000 to 95.
Well, I can explain that one.
Okay.
The 30,000 is the 2018 column, and the 95 is 2019.
Okay, so my number says 25,000 in 2019.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that would have,
So what I'm saying is we've jumped from 25 to 95.
So what would have happened is, he was forecasting 2 years earlier. When he put the $20,000 provision in, he was probably anticipating putting a provision in because there might be some equipment that needs to be replaced in those years. He didn't know. So a year later comes along and we're working on the capital plan. He probably planned to do some major work, like replacement of a reservoir in 2019, or something to do with, I think it was, oh, go ahead, Glen.
Yeah, I'll try to answer it, if I can finish the sentence. $70,000 was allocated on the intent to have the reservoir line. So
Line,
that's the difference, is the $70,000.
Okay. So
So-
I'm just curious on the process, and
Yeah.
maybe I'm losing sight of what's supposed to happen here, but I thought that the idea was that the LAC is involved with the capital plan and involved, not necessarily approving, but recommending, making recommendations to council to go ahead. Is stuff like that then bypassing the LAC entirely?
I think at last year's meetings,
I
because of the shortage of time, what I had said was, when I work on the financial plan, I will be making recommendations that I receive from staff. And basically, I do not have the time to hold 7 different LAC meetings to get your recommendations, so I welcome your input at the public consultation meetings.
So do we have a
But-
lame duck process?
Pardon?
Do we then have a lame duck process?
We have a governance structure that doesn't support, we have a governance structure that doesn't support, well, basically, we don't have the resources to support the governance structure that, the governance structure as it's supposed to be followed.
But even failing our recommendations, wouldn't we receive
Just a heads up.
the information back?
I mean,
That we
we're-
can, yeah, definitely I need to
Yeah,
incorporate
communication.
that into the process somehow to get some feedback from the LAC, whether it's through how
Yep.
long it's, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So I will seek a way of getting recommendations from the LAC before
Or
going
consulting with
forward
the
to
LAC.
council, or consulting with the LACs for, in the 5-year financial plan, so that I can have your recommendations to council in addition to mine.
Which is great. I just also want to make sure there's a system in place that once, we can make a recommendation, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be adopted.
Yeah.
We just want to be able to also receive information back about what has been adopted and what
Yeah.
information, or what capital expenses will be moved forward with. Because obviously, we didn't even know the lining wasn't being considered. So,
Yeah, it's just, again, just to put a bow on this,
Yeah,
we also have our Eagle Cliff Community Association,
yeah,
which are looking to us to say, okay, what's going on? What have you heard? Why are the numbers going up? Why are we being taxed more? Why are we going to be paying increased user fees? How much more? These questions are gonna be coming to us, and for us to say, news to us,
no, I totally get it, and I understand that you guys are accountable to your residents.
protection, operational limitations, I'm kind of jumping backwards from
Are
where
you
you
on
are.
page 3 of 34?
Correct. Right on the bottom.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Right.
I think that is a sadly lacking list of challenges to the system as we've seen this
Yeah.
summer. I think we need to identify leaks, age, infrastructure age, timeliness of leak detection, a number of things that go along with that. Because I think that's the real, challenge to the system, and it's reared its head in spades this year.
Yep. Yeah, I suspect this document was probably a carryover from
I think it
the
probably
previous
was.
year. Yeah.
I think it probably was, but I think in light of the fact that we're identifying it and carrying it forward as a current document,
Yep.
I think that needs to be
For sure.
updated and upgraded.
I agree. I think that gets to sort of the heart of my conversation here is going into these slides and recognizing some of those challenges as well. And it's already understood, I think, that the system isn't capable of delivering fire protection to current standards. There's no treated storage vessel, which has already been mentioned. I understand, historically reservoir supply has been adequate. However, we've certainly experienced an anomaly here in 2019, as you're all aware as well, that because of that depletion, we did issue a stage 4 water restriction that lasted for a number of weeks, but has since been lifted. Some leaks have been found and repaired. I overheard you folks talking before the meeting began that you're aware that our crews are out trying to find additional leaks. The water meter readings that we do have indicate a low flow, so during periods when there generally is no domestic demand on the system, we're still seeing flows in the order of 4 gallons per minute getting through the meters. So there is a loss of water, and as you know, our crews are spending the time to try to find what those sources are. So unfortunately, despite some effort over the last number of days, they had hoped to find one, but they have not, so the search will continue.
And when you refer to flow going through the meters, you're meaning the meters up at
The meters of the chlorination system,
Chlorination,
the main system.
They're not matching up with the
yeah, so
individual
the-
meter readings.
Yeah, and the guys are going back out and starting to re-look at residential meters to see if there's potential issue there, but
So just to
the
clarify,
search continues. is the
Alice,
story.
you said that the flow in the hut is not matching the residential meters. I don't think there's a capacity to check that. I think what we're looking at is a point at which there should be zero flow because we're all sleeping. And
So it's all-
the meter is still flowing,
Yeah.
and I've heard the number between
Yes.
4 and 9
It
gallons
surges.
per minute. It's still
Yeah,
not.
it's not consistent, but generally the lows are typically 4
Yeah.
gallons per minute.
I just wanted to clarify.
How do you look for the leaks? Because today, well, in the last few days, they were up just above me looking, digging, and it's like, are they just digging up the road on the off chance they
No,
might
there's a-
find a leak? Or is there
there-
some more sophisticated technology
There's a
to
valve there.
use?
Yeah, so what they do is they generally close isolation valves to see if, in a systematic way, to isolate it to a general location. So what they were doing is closing isolation valves to see, did the meter stop, when they closed that system, did the meter stop running? Then they have sounding equipment, so they can actually, it's like a stethoscope, essentially.
So why were they digging up a whole section of the road? And was there some indication there was a leak there because they
Yes,
hadn't found
there
one?
was. They isolated that section, and when they isolated it, the meter did stop running. So they were quite confident that a leak was in that particular section. Their sounding equipment is not precise, so unfortunately, a lot of the time they do have to disturb a significant area
We're gonna get it
in
in.
order to find it, so.
263 is not so much in the book.
If I,
Yeah,
just to
leaks, yeah.
switch back, just for something on the wells, are they continuing?
Are we still?
I
running?
know they're still being used,
Yes.
but just to be clear, 2 wells are never running simultaneously.
I don't believe so, they shouldn't.
Okay. Well, no, see that, I can't get in.
That should
I
be
was,
something
over
that's
the
answered.
year past, it was one's on, runs for a period of time, 5 days, whatever it is, a week.
Yeah.
They then shut it down, other one kicks in, I guess it's just a switch there, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And the idea is that it keeps, because we don't need both. We don't need to pump, well, this year we do, but in the past, we've had lots of water, and it was enough to kind of keep it almost level, and, the reservoir went down, but so slowly that
Yep.
we had lots of water in September or October. So no one knows, it seems,
No one knows what's right.
how it's run. This is the question I'm asking. I can't.
Well, I'm certainly lacking information. In all other systems across the island, there is telemetry on the wells. We at least know, and we're tracking the well performance.
Yeah,
In this case,
but my question, all I just want, are both wells pumping? Because, or is it one on, one off? Because it doesn't matter, it's just a matter of,
at this point, I don't know.
oh, okay.
Because we don't have that telemetry hooked up to the well, so we don't have, there's a computer system that we have, a database system.
Oh, that turns them on.
No, just a
Oh.
central
Oh, I see.
depository of information and data about how systems are performing. And on most wells within the municipal systems, there's data loggers that tell us how each well is performing, and so we can just go online and see those. None of that telemetry electronic system is installed in those particular wells, so we're a bit blind, or I am certainly blind at this point, not having any data to understand how they're performing. So to me, it's a data gap that would be valuable to have.
And I know that we've had a discussion amongst our group within the ECLAC on the question of an understanding whether it's true or false. We frankly don't have a confirmation. Do the wells deliver their full capacity, and when not required for consumption, are they actually restoring water levels in the reservoir or not?
Yeah, it's an important question that should be known. At this point, I don't see any evidence of information to allow us to answer those questions.
Would Bob Anderson not have all this information?
Bob may have some of the history. For me, quite honestly, my involvement in Eagle Cliff has occurred when when we found out we had a low reservoir, so I'm catching up here. And we need to do some more digging and understanding some of the history and try and answer some of these questions. It is possible that it does exist, but I personally
But what I'm saying is that somebody must know whether the well is switched on, because it's got a switch in the, so someone walks in, let's say Dewey walks in, and say, Dewey, which well's running? And you say, oh, both, see, click, or no, this one's down for now.
My understanding is that it is manually done and they only.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, so that it's not automatically controlled.
But in the past, historically, one was run, one rested, and then, and it was something to do with cavitation at the bottom, sometimes if it's hard on the pumps. So this way it ensured that it could, and then we never had problems. Because we had water again, right? So it wasn't, why pump all the water uphill, spend the money for electricity when the reservoir's got water anyway?
Oh yeah, it requires a tremendous amount.
All we did has that nightly run, it would, whatever it works, it would feed the system, and then, but I was told that it pumps up. Those pumps have the pressure capacity that if they're not being drawn off, if it exceeds the 8 gallons or whatever, it pushes it back.
If the demand is there, then the water will exit the wells and go into the system. But if the demand isn't there, it's a very high pressure pump, which it has to be because you're operating with a very high pressure. And that's what the guys tell me as well, that the pump is adequate to actually feed it all the way back up into the surface reservoir.
But adequate and does may be different. I don't know, and that's, I think, what we need to.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's it.
Where was I?
Oh, sorry.
We're almost done.
Beavers.
Last couple bullets there. One is the 2-inch meter is the one we rely heavily on. The public works fellows feel that 2-inch meter is getting a little tired and are suggesting it be replaced, just to make sure we're also getting really accurate readings.
Which meter is that?
The 2-inch mainline meter in chlorinations.
In the hut?
Yeah, in the hut. Yeah.
Okay.
And the last one is, in talking to Bob, I think there's two theories around some of the water woes that were experienced this year. One is a leak that's just causing additional demand. Bob feels that there is the possibility of some beaver activity higher up in the system. He's quite confident that something may exist.
Just before you go any further on that, we hiked the length of Cartner Creek right almost to the headwaters.
Right, very head?
Pretty much.
Right to the very top?
Yep.
Okay.
Pretty much, and there's no sign of any water diversion, no sign of any, I know that early on in the year, there was some beaver activity in the reservoir itself, or sign of it, but in terms of the assumption or statement that said water was being diverted by beavers somewhere upstream, didn't happen.
Okay, yeah. Bob thought it would, if it existed, would have been quite high up in the system. But
the minute we heard that, we said, okay, well, let's see what we're dealing with, and we hiked up. And
okay, that's good. We talked about not doing that. Our guys were out there today as well and did a bucket test, and on the positive, I guess, is that flows are returning. They're estimating flows probably in the order of 20 to 25 gallons a minute there just this morning.
That flows into
directly into the reservoir.
Right.
So this is the little stream that comes into the surface reservoir. So obviously dramatic increase from when the three of us went up and took a look. So some actions that were taken in 2018. There was, my understanding is there were some service line repair leaks done. I have not reviewed it myself, but I understand the dam safety operation and maintenance manual was produced. There was fire hydrants maintained, ongoing regular meter readings done 4 times a year, and understanding the turbidity meter was also installed
So what exactly is the dam safety O&M and?
Well, that would have been, I mean,
That's
there's,
operation.
yeah. Yeah.
Dam safety?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Gotta
I
have-
mean, it is technically a dam under
The Mount Polley
reg-
incident?
regulations of the province.
Okay.
Anything higher than a meter that holds water is considered a regulation. Actions 2019 and 20, and this is really just now me, through conversation and me offering my personal thoughts. As just starting with the first one, just again to recognize that there was a budget allocation item to reline the reservoir, but I don't think that's very practical, so I personally would not recommend moving forward with that. As discussed, I think to make sure we've got the most accurate information we can is to replace that 2-inch meter. Turbidity, it showed signs of being very high last year. We're seeing repeat values this year. I looked at the values even just for the last 3 months, and again, that perhaps is higher because of the depletion of water. So I think it's something we need to look further. But certainly the turbidity readings that were occurring both last year and this year far exceed the provincial health regulation. There is variability that's permitted, but turbidity shouldn't exceed 5 NTU more than two times a year, and 5 NTU is being exceeded very regularly. So further discussion, I think, needs to be had about the cause and ultimately health risk and what action should be taken on that front.
So is this in?
No, to be honest, this is new information that I've only
I can print this for you.
compiled this week in preparation for this
I
meeting.
think it's part of what you sent in, right? It's all boxed off.
So is that the raw water test that shows the turbidity, or is it you just got a turbidity meter in
There's a
that?
turbidity meter, yeah. So, there the average turbidity, so turbidity is only needing to be reported to the province occasionally, and the information that's reported and the averages certainly meet regulation. It's the spikes that haven't been really looked at.
I think maybe it says chart on page 24 of the package, because this says
I like-
chlorination shed turbidity.
Okay.
It's page 24, 45,
Oh,
or
page-
17, 34.
20. Oh,
We've got two sets of
Yeah,
numbers.
okay.
yeah.
So in 2018, so there were only, it appears that there was only 2 instances exceeding 5 NTU, which is the maximum regulation. You're allowed 2 per year, but it's happening more frequently in 2019. So again, just something that's going to require a little bit more investigation.
This is a year out of date, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but no, Glen said there was,
Yeah.
but it would make
Yeah,
sense to
I'm
have
I'm
more.
jumping into the current year now.
Yeah. It would make sense to have more this year with what's happened, right?
Yeah,
The
the
drop in-
depletion would have caused an effect on that. So I need to look more broadly at the data and be in conversation with Vancouver.
So if you wanted to
Coastal
take turbidity out, you'd have to have a,
filter.
and what is that?
What media?
Oh, and that's too
Clay,
much.
sand,
There's all kinds of technologies that could be used, so.
So standalone
I'm
systems?
definitely not in a position to state.
No, I didn't expect that, I
A
just.
finer filter of some kind, there's multiple ones that could be used. There's many factors that will have to be played into, or considered in making that determination. As we've already talked about, and I know you folks do have a desire for a reservoir, but fire protection, so again, a reservoir is there for multiple purposes.
By reservoir, you mean water tank?
A water tank, yeah.
I know, but
That's reservoir
there's
in my
already the
language,
open
but yeah,
reservoir,
sure.
so I didn't
Okay,
want
so the source reservoir as opposed to a balancing reservoir or a tank. So need to reach agreement or conclusion on the purpose of that tank and then design it accordingly. But certainly fire protection is something that in today's modern age there are requirements. In fact, there are rules within the municipal bylaws that require a certain level of fire protection, which does not get met in this particular instance. We've talked about the past as well, and I totally support and agree that there needs to be a better mechanism of monitoring the reservoir level. Manual having to drive up and visually look at some things. A bit obsolete in my opinion. I think the challenge there is there's no power up in that area, so if we want an automated system, that would have to be battery operated, which is not really a big deal. It can be done, but at a minimum, let's have a gauge for visual inspection, but some form of electronic telemetry, in my opinion, would be good as well. There needs to be continued effort to kind of find out what was the cause of that anomaly this year in terms of the depletion of the reservoir. So further investigation and ensuring that there isn't a substantial leak is something that municipal crews will continue to do. It's already discussed if we're going to rely on those wells. Right now we're a bit behind in how they're actually performing. So understanding that would be helpful in my opinion. And the final item there for me is communicating with staff and really doing so more with the council is water is a pretty big issue on the island, as all systems are experiencing strain and influences for a variety of reasons. I think it needs to be looked at more comprehensively, and I am making a recommendation to council later in the year to do a comprehensive assessment of water supply and distribution systems in the form of a water systems master plan. And this is looking island-wide, but only at municipal
Well,
systems,
just
not
like I
private
said,
systems.
when this past winter, when the water was turned on for a Hood Point, like, if that reservoir had been, like somebody would have noted it, said, sorry, we can't help you out this year, because we can't afford the water. And that was an immense amount, and that would be an immense amount of water leaving.
Yep.
And those are the kinds of things where, or is that something where now we can put in a pump system there? Because then they can have it, but then they can give it back, if you know what I mean. But it kind of just, like, those are things that, because we're this far apart, right?
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't you want to have something to make it, not one system,
Yeah.
but when you need it, you got it. When you don't need it,
Yeah.
it is what it is, right?
Well, I think from my perspective, that is something that needs to be understood. You know, again, why I feel that things need to be looked at comprehensively. Every LAC desires to be autonomous and self-sufficient, but there are a lot of interdependencies happening because of demand. So if the interdependencies are there and required, then we need to take also a fresh look at the big picture and also the strains. There is additional development, more demands on the system for depletion, climate change. There's all kinds of things. So in order to make sure every system is sustainable for the future, and that's at the heart of it. You can operate today and ignore the future, or do the research that's required for everybody to have confidence that they have sustainable water into the future. We need to look at that comprehensively.
So I'm curious, Ben, you kind of brushed on the last bullet there, the water system master plan. That's what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
Do you see that as being developed in-house?
No, it would have to.
Why not?
Municipality doesn't have the professional experience or resources to do that internally.
Maybe your idea of a master plan must be bigger than mine. I'm not seeing what's,
There's a lot involved.
You had a more fulsome description in the point yesterday.
Yeah, so it would,
So I ripped it off the back. That was apparently an internal email, but I ripped it published, so it's not on here anymore.
yeah, yeah. It
So-
would, it's, most importantly, of those systems that do have wells, understanding surface reservoirs are much simpler, but we're seeing significant depletion within the aquifers in water in King Edward Bay. It was, I'm sure you folks have read it. There's significant depletion of those systems that are fully relying on aquifers. We need to understand those aquifers better. That's a lot of technical work, and cost is tied up in the groundwater component. The other aspects of being looked at are just factoring in the asset management component in terms of age of infrastructure, fire protection, getting a better sense of where is it and where is it not achieved. It's to look at the influence of climate change. It's to look at the influence of community growth, perhaps not so much in some of the systems, but certainly in the Code Bay system, the plant growth. So there's many, many factors. It's developing a financial program. It's really looking at a lot of things. And so there's a very much in my eyes, it also involves communication. There's administration. There's looking at governance structure. I mean, there's all kinds of things that would come into play in a master plan.
So that was my concern in seeing that, because I see an island-wide master plan as necessary, and that's great, but when I see that, I also get concerned that the individual needs of each system aren't going to be addressed until the master plan is developed, and that's a concern. if
Yeah,
that's
no,
the case.
no, I don't think so. I mean, we recognize that there's a need to respond to current issues. You know, even if we move forward, I think there's certain things that are known to be required that we can advance and deal with. This is more big picture and future looking. There's certainly an overlap to that, but yeah, we need to continue to identify and respond to needs that are known in the foreseeable future. This study, assuming it's approved by council when it gets underway, I hope is kind of largely complete by the end of 2020. So let's go on really good. It's probably a year exercise.
so just, thinking about this for a minute and understand that I'm looking at this with blinders on. My concern is what we've got going on in Eagle Cliff,
Yeah.
which is a system that's worked for a lot of years. We've paid for a CREAS report trying to do a look forward already with options that are no longer on the table apparently. We've done a capital plan that is a zero capital plan. There's no foresight in it at all. There's no plan. It's lacking. This to me is stuff that should be done in-house. That I'd be looking at the expertise at the table and within the municipality to be able to provide, fulsome move forward steps. I get the idea that, okay, if we're going to do a global, global look, yeah, that's different. And maybe needs a consultant, but it seems to me that what we've got are systematic issues at a ground level now, which should and could be dealt with at the first level, before we start going into big master plans and spending additional money that when we're not spending money necessarily in the best way now, or that we can see now.
Yeah, I think I hope I'll re-clarify that I agree with you that there are steps, there's clear deficiencies that are known, that a master plan isn't necessarily going to change. And I think there's issues that, yes, absolutely can be dealt with and moved forward in a faster manner. I'm not suggesting it needs to wait for master plan, because the decisions that are made that are clearly understood as needs today would just be decisions that fit into the master plan. It's not something that necessarily needs to be delayed. We need to review again, and ultimately, as that I'm fully aware that there's been study done in the past. My understanding, and I'm looking forward to hearing your folks' recommendations, my understanding is that there's been a lack of willingness to move on some of those past studies. So, you know, it's we need, I guess, to get your clarity. I'm looking forward to hearing what you folks want to move forward with.
Can I just clarify what Korea's report we're talking about? Is the
The
only one,
report that was done last year.
okay, 'cause the only one I know about is the one that was done for 1428, 1436 Eagle Cliff Road.
No.
Okay, so there's another one.
There's
Oh,
one
okay.
that looked at was supply and storage.
Oh, okay. Ah, I must have missed the meeting where we talked about that one.
Yeah, I said, this is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Have you costed out at all any of these actions here, like replacing 2-inch meter, for example, what might that cost? If we did that, adding telemetry to the well, I have no idea what these sorts of things
Yeah.
might cost.
A meter is $1,000. What was the other one? Telemetry?
We should have.
That could be a little bit more expensive. We'd have to explore and see what the well setup is. That can be in the $10,000 to $20,000 range.
And a master plan, 300K.
That was a very high budget value. It's not a fixed value, and the scope still needs to be sorted out. That's just a preparatory value that was.
When you talk about an island-wide water system master plan, how is it more beneficial to have an island-wide plan versus each district? Is the island-wide plan to eventually connect these systems, to make them independent in some way?
Well,
why not just have an Eagle Cliff master plan?
Because there are interdependencies on all the systems, we need to understand them together. These reservoirs, anything that draws on the aquifer, these aquifers don't operate on LAC boundaries, and that's what we're seeing. King Edward Bay, Bowen Bay, Blue Water, they're all responding and drawing on a common aquifer. There are interdependencies, and we have to understand those systems together. And there may be, when we look at all the information in combination, and look at community growth, we look at climate change, we look at other systems, issues that are influencing these systems. I mean, there already is an interdependency and an interlinkage between Glen and Eagle.
That's only because their pipes freeze.
Well, my understanding is that they have been used for other instances as well, but the point is that in my professional opinion, these systems need to be, they have common issues for one, so there's a lot more cost efficiencies to look at them together in a common study than to repeat the study for each individual system. The timeline works because a lot of them use investigation. To me, it makes no sense to be doing a series when they can be done more cost effectively in the same time frame. And ultimately, it's the municipality's responsibility to operate the system as well. So they too need to understand them together and the influences. This is understanding these systems decades into the future for the next generation too. So it does need to be a macro scale. To me, it does need to be looked at in a comprehensive way and not as independent entities.
So again, just my opinion for what it's worth. If we use your macro budget number as a wild ass guess estimate at 300K, and Eagle Cliff puts in our share based on your formula.
I don't have a formula.
Well, you proposed a couple options, one, number of households connected, or number two was approximate value of water system and proportionate share. So either way, we're into it for a fair chunk of change of the 300,000. We have $260,000 of capital money available, and to eat it up for that purpose, or a portion of it for that purpose, to me defeats the purpose for which that money is being accumulated. That money is being accumulated for capital improvements over time to keep the system current for Eagle Cliff. It's not about the island.
Also, I can appreciate that other water districts have challenges when it comes to the aquifer. But if we decide in Eagle Cliff, our biggest problem is storage capacity. We just need a tank. It doesn't impact the island-wide master plan for how
The wells are being drawn down.
If we decide that we need something this is what we need now. Like my frustration is when you make it into a bigger picture, it's going to take a long time. We know how this island works, right? And we know how master plans come together and the time frame that it works in and all that kind of stuff. This is we've come to realize this is a fairly immediate situation we need to deal with, and that's why for us it's on a macro level of what does Eagle Cliff need right now. So that's where I'm very concerned about making this an island-wide issue. And I know it is island-wide, but it is still 7 districts that have different challenges, although they're connected in many ways.
And the scope, and ultimately, I mean, I appreciate the comment about cost distribution. That was intended to be brainstorming in an internal email. It's unfortunate that it ended up being in your agenda package. But there's no firm recommendation. It needs to be, good point, raised the same question. So cost distribution, the scope of the project would definitely need to consider the issues that need to be looked at within each of the systems, because as much as there's commonalities across the island, and certainly because of the responsibility that the municipality has, there is a lot to consider. But in terms of actually formulating the work program and cost distribution, that needs to be further considered in terms of formulating what the study would actually look at. The issues for me are there's clear signs of change occurring in all of these systems. And we can either knee-jerk, and that's from my personal opinion, there's been a lot of knee-jerk reactions without a lot of understanding and being proactive in heading off what is to come. And it's proactive in my personal opinion, and why my recommendation is there. We need to understand what is the cause of the changes, what are the influences to ensure that we have a plan in place. We've already talked about how there's, and it's talked about here, in fact, the reserve level that you have relative to the actual value of your infrastructure is actually much better than some of the other systems. The disparity between value of infrastructure and reserve is much less in some other instances. Recognizing that change, a lot of these systems are old, renewal is going to happen. There is a cost to renewing and operating your system proactively. There's a cost looming, and the whole purpose of the plan is to be more forward-looking and to make sure that an understanding is in place so that we're not always in crisis mode. We have a plan in place, knowing what's coming ahead of us. That's the focus and purpose of the program.
But we can do both. Number one,
Yep.
for us, is we need to put Eagle Cliff back into its normalized operation, which should, with the coming rains and everything else, finding the last of the leaks, it'll all be done.
Yep.
And so that should be the focus. And there are a few things that could be done. We could put a surface line, like there's, in other words, we should be looking at solutions to bring 8-inch pipe down the mountain. So we've got, whether we're gonna use it to go back up again, but we've got a flow coming out of the reservoir that meets, it comes through the chlorinator, goes to the standpipes. So we have an 8-inch, at least an 8, or even if it were 6-inch. And that matches into a 6-inch, and that isn't gonna cost. Like, and now at least we've solved part of the fire problem, and we're using our capital. Like, so at the same time you're building the master plan, which, like I said, I get that, is that, okay, Eagle Cliff has 3 things that need to be done. Whatever, let's determine whatever they are.
Yep.
And they need to go on at the same time. Because you know, if that's in place.
I totally agree with you.
And, yeah, so I'm just saying, we're sitting
Yep.
in neutral here.
Yep.
And so we just need to know that, okay, what's the next step?
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good segue to just close the public meeting then.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And then get into the LAC meeting.
I just need a couple minutes. You guys want to stretch your legs or, 3-minute break? You're welcome to stay.
I know it's not under your problem, because you're new here, but the system, all these leaks and things weren't looked at before in the past.
Yeah, so with the Creos thing, I recommended there, they went hot. That's a storage tank up top.